So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the MP workshop, the Python primer session. My name is Ting Zheng. I'll be lead the first part of this Python primer. And here we have Martin. He will lead the second part of this session. And we're going to cover the basics of Python and the usage of this Jupyter notebook. So if you're a beginner for coding or you're not familiar with Python, this is a good chance you get to know with Python and the Jupyter notebook. And if you have any questions during this sessions, you can put on a red sticker, and one of our staff will help you. And if you think I'm making a mistake, if you have any question for me, you can just raise your hand. And so here we have several lessons here for today and tomorrow. And today we're going to cover this Python primer. So please open this folder. And here we have 8 lessons. And each of those will take about 15 minutes to 20 minutes. So we will start from this first one, introduction. So if you can open this, we will see this Jupyter notebook. If you have come to this page, please put on a green sticker, or not, put on a red sticker. All right, so throughout this 3-day workshop, we're going to use this Jupyter notebook as our working environment. So this gives us a dynamic way to use Python, which will keep a persistent namespace and a kernel. And also we can have those marked down here. So we have construct all the environment that will be used in this whole workshop. But if you want to install this Jupyter notebook on your own laptop, you can just we recommend use of Anaconda, where you can click this link and see the manual for the installation. And there are also other sources about the installation of this Jupyter notebook that you can turn to after this workshop. So here I have all the code inputted here. So if you don't mind, you can just, if you want to follow me for live coding, you can just come to the main page here and click this new and Python 3. Okay. Sorry, I already opened one. Okay. And it will pop up a new window, and I will do live coding, and you might want to follow me with this live coding. So first, we're gonna introduce the difference between code and markdown.
Additional keys, people can go into the Python channel if they want to ask questions.
Okay.
That's all. Hold on, my Wi-Fi just went away.
And also, if you're in the Slack, you can go to the Python channel and just put in your live questions, and our staff will answer your questions. Thanks. So this Jupyter notebook is composed of those cells, and you can put in anything you want, like code or markdown in those cells. And when you click on the cell, there will be a green border, which shows that it's in the editing mode. And here we have in cell. Here, that means that this is a cell for coding. So we can just write our first code. And click Shift Enter. And we will have our very first code here. So when we use this print function, this Jupyter notebook will evaluate this and do what we ask them to do. So and use the Shift Enter. This notebook will execute the code and make a new cell for us here. And we can also write a markdown cell like this. So we, if you type if you enter the editing mode and type escape plus M at the same time, the cell will be transferred to this markdown cell. And you can put in any messages or text here. For example, okay, and shift enter. So after we execute this, Jupyter Notebook won't see this as a code, but it's just a text. And you can go back and edit them as you wish. So this is called Markdown. And so beside the escape M, you can also turn it back to the cell for coding by typing escape plus Y. And also there are other useful functions like finding and replacing, and just open the help menu. So right now I'm going to ask you to try typing the escape plus H and to see how it works. So these are all the useful shortcuts for using the Jupyter Notebook, and you can turn to them all the time. And here, other than that, you can even put in those equations like in the Wikipedia. So it's a very functional tool for you to explore. Anyone has questions? Okay, we'll move on. Other than that, you can also do something else in this Jupyter Notebook, like communicate with the system to say some command to the system. For example, here, if you use an exclamation mark at the start and you put in some command for shell and enter, you will see all the files in this folder. And also you can, for example, like date, you can see the current time in the system. So it's an easy way to communicate with the system. And also there are some magic command for using some particular program in this Jupyter Notebook. To use that, you should start with this percentage mark. And for example, if you want to do this, so this just tell the Jupyter Notebook that you want to show the picture inline that we will be using later. And also, if you issue this command, the Jupyter Notebook will know that you want the Python debugger open. So those are all the useful stuff that you want to explore in your future using of this Jupyter Notebook. So Yeah, so the last thing I want to say here is that distributed notebook is extremely useful when you want to use when you want to include some supplemental in your publications. So you can just include this Jupyter notebook as a supplemental materials for your publication for the readers to know exactly what you did when you use any code in your research work. So that would be very useful for other readers to get to know. And here I also list 2 useful links for your future reference to learn more about this Jupyter notebook. So any questions at this stage? Okay, we'll move on to the lessons for the Python. So let's go to this page and open the lesson 2. And also, if you want to do live coding, you want to go back to this blank cell file. Right. So we're going to give an introduction for Python about expressions, variables, and some data structures like list, dictionary, and we'll move on to conditional like if and for loop, and also we'll tell you something about how to write a function. So now we're going to start with expressions. So when you put in a code here, like 2019, and we press Shift Enter, this Jupyter notebook will evaluate this 2019 and return its value. So here we already put in a number, and Jupyter notebook will just evaluate to a number. If we put in a mathematical expression like, and Python will do this operation and give you the evaluated value here. And also we can do more complex things like, so Jupyter notebook will do all the evaluation and return the value. And here we have both input cells and output cells, and those output cells is just the evaluation of this input cells. So we can also, other than those number, we can also put in some functions, and those functions are called call expression. So for example, if I put in this, so Python will first evaluate those operand, and those operand will as a function argument to this max function, and they will and it will evaluate this max function and to give it value. So it's 4. And we can also have other function like like this. And also we can have more complicated structure, like so we will first evaluate this max function and use this the output of this max function and this 4, and we'll put that in this min function and give you output. And other than just having 2 arguments here, you can also have multiple argument in a function, like and it will also do the work. So after we know how to put in those code, we want to keep those values along this process. So we want to have those values be named. So where we will use variables. So for example, I can name I can have my name, my age, and my first name, second name. Oops. Oh, sorry. So you wanna. So by doing this, I just assign this 27 a name to be age, and assign this string a name that is the first name. Assign this string to be my second name. So what happened? Why it's not responding?
So say like one way, if you get in trouble, you can completely restart the entire kernel and rerun everything. So you go to
Alright, sure. Just do this. Okay. All right.
And tell people.
Okay. So if you get into any trouble like me, that this cell will never finish running, you can always restart this kernel by coming to here and restart and run off, and you will get back to what you were working on. Right, sorry about that, and we'll continue. So in Python, there's a convention called duck typing, where Python will try to infer the data type when you put in when you assign any variables. So unlike other coding language, so you have to assign specific data type, but in Python it doesn't work like that. So Python will just infer the type of those variables. For example, we have assigned this 27 to age, right? So if we use this type function for age, and we will see that the type of this age variable is an integer, right? Oops, sorry. So to see this duck typing in life, so for example, we can assign this age to be a float number, for example. And we can do it again. You can see that the type for age changed to a float. And there's also another important function in this Jupyter notebook is that throughout this single run of this kernel, those names will be preserved once you have assigned it. So for example, if you assign it to like 42, and you put in age here, you will still get 42 because the notebook will remember what you have assigned. And if you change it to another one, and it will be 29. So notebook will remember the last assignment you entered here. So next we're going to talk about functions. So we have introduced min function, max function, and this type function. So we'll talk more about the print function. So as we have done in the first lesson, we use this print function to print something, right? Like a hello world. So in this function, we have two parentheses, and within the parentheses, we put in any argument, and and the function will use those arguments as input and do what the function will do and give you the output here. And other than just print this string, you can also print other things. So here I have a double argument for this print function. First, I wanted to print this string, and then I wanted to print this integer, and it will do the work. And also I can print the type of certain variables. And it will return that this first name is a string. And also there another useful function in the Jupyter notebook in Python is that you can always check the usage of every function by doing this. So for example, if you want to get to know how the print works, you can use this help function, and it will show the functionality of this print function. And you can also do it this way. It will show a pop-up here, and you can scroll down if this is too long. And you can also do this by Shift and Tab. There will be also a pop-up window here. Shift plus Tab. And if you click here, you can turn to this. Alright, so what I want you to do is to explore what is the function for this, what is the usage for this being function by using the method I've introduced. Alright, so as you have seen here, this function will give the binary representation of an integer. So for example, bin of 10 would be this 1010. And also there's a interesting thing about this print function is that so the print function does not return anything. It returns a none. So here when I tell the Python to print 10, it print 10 first, but this print function will return a none. And so when we evaluate this second print function, it will just print none. So which is the interesting thing about this print function. And other than those default functions, we will have other functions that we want to use. So if you go back to this lesson 2 doc, and here is a link that you can see that there's a list of built-in functions that you can check after this workshop. But we often need functionality that's not included in this set. So we want to so to get a function that's not included in our namespace, we will want to import them. So if we go back to the working notebook, so for example, we can import this math module. Okay. So we can import this math module, and then we can use all the functions in this math module. For example, I can do the exponential of 2, or I can do sine. So there are a lot of useful functions in this math modules. So the format for this would be, first you wanna type in the module you have imported, and then you use this dot and function name to use that function. And we can do more about this. For example, there's another format of importing something. So by doing it this way, you don't have to use this format like module.function. So by doing this way, you can just use those functions directly. So for example, you don't have to do the math.add. By doing this way, you can just use the add function straight. Right. So other than those standard library, we can also use external libraries that we installed from other places. So if you go back to this documentation page, so Python have this built-in library that you can turn into this documentation link. And you can also have external libraries that can be managed, where you can find very useful tools. For example, this Anaconda, as I mentioned, or this pip, and use those to install any libraries you want. And for example, you can use this command like conda install pandas to install this pandas module in your current Python. So here are some useful libraries that you want to get to know. First one is a NumPy. It allows you to manipulate a numerical array. And this SciPy will allow you to do some scientific computing. And this matplotlib will allow you to plot some beautiful figures. So we'll try them out. So first we want to import the NumPy. So by importing a module like this, you don't have to use this name in the following code. You can just use this np to tell you that you want to say NumPy. So here I'm going to draw an inflammation figure using those modules. So here I'm going to load a pre-saved data into this notebook. So I ran into some found. Okay. Oh, okay, sorry. Yep. That's it. So here again, I run into some trouble, and I want to stop this kernel. Oh, sorry. Yep. All right, so here I have load that data sheet, and then I can do this. So here I will get a inline showing this beautiful picture. And other than that, you can even view a crystal structure in line in this Jupyter notebook. So we're going to start using the Pymatgen. So here I will load a pre-saved graphite structure here. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you misspelled structure from file, and then it said SIF.
Oh. Oh, stupid. Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah. Okay. Why do I have to restart it? Okay. So here we will have a structure of graphite. So if we want to make it more beautiful, we can issue some argument in this view function. For example, and it will show a better 3D interactive image of this graphite lattice. So any questions at this point?
Can you show people how to extend and
Okay, yeah, sure, yeah. So I would ask everyone to restart those kernel to avoid any errors result from this Python debugger. So by doing that, you
Restart and like don't run all.
okay, yeah, just restart it and don't click run now. You can just restart and you're working from the last cell in the end. Right, so we have finished lesson 2, and then we're going to cover this lesson 3 about lists. So a list is a data structure in Python. So when we deal with 100 variables, we definitely don't want to name them one by one. So we want to use the list data structure to store all of them. So to use a list, we use this bracket and use those commas to separate each of those values. And we can use this len function to get the length of the list. So if you go back to the working notebook, so here we can assign a list called pressures. And if we print it, and print its length, so here after we have assigned this list to these pressures, and you can see if you print it, you will return a list, and its length is 4. And you can refer to each of those elements by using its index. So for example, if we have pressures 0, and we will get the first element in this list. So just to remember that index start from 0. And also you can do, like, you can get the other elements. Oh, sorry. Yep. And what happens if we do this? Yeah, so we can view these pressures as also a collections of characters. So we can also get individual characters out of the string using this. So if we use pressures index 3, we can get the S here. So string just act very similar as this list structure. And for list, we can use an assignment to assign a single value in this list. So for example, we already have this pressures assigned here, right? And we can change one of the elements in it. So for example, as you can see here, the first element of this pressures list is changed to 1000. And we can also do other modification for the list. For example, we can append an element and a new item at the end of this list. So for example, so we have assigned this. and it's 134. And if we do some appending, and then we check its value again, it turned to this turned to this list with 2 new elements in the end. So here I want to talk more about the format here. So this dot append is just like a function, but is bind to this to this list object. So if you want to append, so say if you have an age, you want to append it. This will not gonna work because the age is not a list object. There are other manipulation of lists, and you can use the help function to explore it. So those are all the useful documentation that you can always turn to in future. So other than the append function, you can also extend a list by put another list in the end of the list. So for example, so here I have assigned 2 lists. And we extend this team primes to the original primes list. And if we check the value for this primes list, so this team primes will be list will be extended to the end of this primes list. And what if we append a list to another list? You can see here that the older primes will be appended to the primes list as a single element in the end. So you might want to remember that append will just append an element at the end, and extend will just elongate the list to a longer list that include 2 lists you type in here. And you can delete an element in the list by using the del. So it's not a function, it's just a statement in the Python language. So for example, if we do so the original primes like this, and if we do del primes 4, and if we see it again, yep. So by doing this, we have delete this 9, which has an index of 4. And also we can have an empty list. So it's just like a 0 for number. And it's a useful starting point for collecting values. So you can just say something equals to this empty list, and you just keep putting in values in this list. And you can also has a heterogeneous list with different values of data type. So for example, you can have so in this list we have both integers as well as strings. And the difference between strings and lists I will show here is that, so for example, if we have a string called element, and if we want to change one of the characters in this string, and Python will not allow you to do that because the string data type in Python is just a single value with parts. It's not a collection of values. So this is a difference between a list and a string. So you can retrieve certain characters in a string by using element 0, but you can't assign a new value to it. You can just do it for list. And you can even slice the list by doing this. So here we retrieve the first element, and so the negative indices just count backwards from the end of the string or list, and it will give you an M. And if you do this, and you will get a part of this string or list. So for example, if you if you want to, if you type in this 2 to 5, so Python will count from 2, which is included, to 5, which is excluded. So it includes the lower bound and it excludes the upper bound. And what if I do this? So if I type in an index of 9, then it is out of bound. So there will be error. As I said, we can use the len function to get the length of a list or string. So here I want to go back to this documentation file and scroll down to the exercise session. So I'm gonna give you 1 to 2 minutes to work on this. So what does this following print? You might want to try it out in the working notebook. All right, so we're going to do it together. So we have element carbon, And by typing the 1, 2, 3, we will get the second and the third element out of this string. So by doing this, we're starting from the index of 1 to the end. And by doing this, we're starting from the first element and to the index of 2. And if we leave all these two index blank, we would have the exact same list. And for this, it is also very useful that we can retrieve every other element in this list. So the first one, the third one, and the fifth one. Yeah. If we do this, you just return a list that is backward, from the backward. So there are more useful exercises you want to go through after this workshop. So due to time limit, we will just move on. And now we're going to introduce something about this for loops. If you can open this lesson 4 and go back to the working notebook. So after we have introduced this list, we might want to do some repeat actions on each of those values in the list. So for example, if I have a list that is a collection of characters, so here I have assigned this list to have a name, and we do this. So by doing this, I'm enumerating every element in this name. So for example, Python will first assign this letter to this J and print letter J, and then it will go to the next element in this list and assign this I to be letter and print letter I. So and repeat this process, and that's why you will see that Python will print all of the elements in this list. And you can also enumerate a string. So for example, we just assign Jamie to this name. Now we just copy the code here to here and do the same, and it will print the same thing because you can also enumerate this string one by one. So other than lists and string, you can also enumerate dictionary keys that we will introduce, dictionary keys that we will introduce later. And what if we just want to do some action a certain time, but we don't want to enumerate some list? We can do this. Oops. So for example, if we want to print some number from 0 to 10, we can use this range function. So this range function will give you a set of numbers beginning at 0. And to this upper bound, exclude this upper bound. So it's from 0 to 10. And of course, you can not only start from 0, you can start from anywhere. For example, it will show, it will enumerate from 2. And other than printing, you can do more complicated actions in this for loop. For example, if you want to do a summation, we can first assign the summation to be 0. And we do some summation for the natural number. So as you can see, that Python will do the work for you to sum from 0 to 5. And you can even track at the index you're enumerating. So for example, if you use this, so this enumerate function will not only retrieve the element in the name, but it will also give the index of that element. So n will be the element of that, will be the index of that element, and letter will be the element. So we will do some interesting stuff here. So by doing this, we can retrieve not only the element itself, but also its index. Sometimes you might need it. And every iterable has a length, so you can use this length function as I have said. Get the length of the iterable, and other iterable is very similar, that you can also use this length function to get its length. And you can enumerate 2 lists at the same time by using this format. So by doing this, you're zipping those 2 lists together that allow you to retrieve the element with the same index within those two lists at the same time, and to do some operation on those at the same time. So here we'll go back to the documentation, and in the bottom we will have a, here we will have an exercise for you. You might want to try yourself. So if you're an advanced user of Python, you might want to try the exercise at the in the last. So to see if you can do this, but for beginners you can just do this exercise yourself. So we'll do it together. So since we want to do a summation, so we want to have a summation, a name for summation at first, so to be 0. And then we will do a for loop. And we can use either of those power function, or you can just use a number times a number to get a square. And here's the answer. So if there's no question, I will move on to the next session, and then we will have a coffee break around 10:30. So now please open this lesson 5 for your reference, and go back to the working notebook for live coding. All right, after we have learned about for loops, we might want to make decisions during this process. So for example, we can use this if statement to make the Python to do a judgment to a certain expression. So say if we have a water temperature of -1, so by saying this, the Python will first judge if this is true. So -1, if -1 is greater than 100, and it's not, so Python will not execute this line of code. And other than just giving one condition, we can give more. I'll just copy it here. So the else will give another chance for the Python to judge. So when Python judges this is not true, then it will not execute this. And then it will go to this else part and to execute this. So Python will execute either one of those. One of those if it judges it to be true. And you can also have another condition. So we can use this elif statement to put in another condition. So Python will evaluate those conditions one by one. So the order of those conditions does matters. So if you change the order of those, so if I have a temperature in liquid state, then if the temperature is over 100, then it's boiling, right? But if I change the order of it, that's what I'm not saying. So, so if I change the second part here, and if I first judge this part, then the results will be liquid. So you might be cautious about orders of those conditions, which will matter. And another thing I want to emphasize here is that in Python we will use this indentation to tell the Python that this is a if statement and this is a condition, and this is what you want to execute. So in convention you need to put it. So in convention people put in 4 spaces here, and if you're using some working environment like Jupyter Notebook, then it will automatically give you 4 spaces here. I think I just changed the order. That's saying that order it matters. So let's do some exercise on what is true and what is false. Say we have this condition, and Python will judge it to be false. And different from the assignment expression, when we want to judge if 2 values are equal to each other, then we will use this double equal mark here. Are they equal? Nope. Is 3 greater than 2? Yes. So the type of this argument we call here is a Boolean. So basically, everything you put in this if statement, you might want it to be a Boolean. But can other type of value be put in the if statement? So what is the Boolean 5? So every integer other than 0 will be evaluated to be true. So 0 would be evaluated to be false. And also a string can also be evaluated to be a Boolean. And it's also true. And what about an empty list? It's false. So an empty list is just like a 0 in number. And also we will introduce this type of data structure which is called dictionary. And an empty dictionary is also false. And of course, a none is also false. So here I also want to emphasize one thing, is that when we keep track of a value and we use if statement to do something, so if temperature is 100, then the if statement will work. But what if it is 0? So 0 will be judged to be false. So this if statement will not work to execute this print command. So if you want to collect this t from other output of function, and you just want to avoid that t is not none, so that's why you write this function. But this might be might not be what you want. If the temperature is 0, then it will also be judged to false. So what you might want to do here is to put in a more rigorous condition, like if temperature is not none, then this if statement will work again. Yeah, so the time has come to 10:30. We will have a coffee break. And if you go back to this lesson 5, in the end, there's another interesting optional exercise that you can do during this coffee break or after the workshop. Okay, let's do the coffee break.
Okay. Also, I've posted this in the Slack, but after every lesson, we want to get feedback on something that you thought worked really well and something that didn't work as well, so that we can, iteratively get better and respond to what people want. So right now, I posted it in the Slack, but also if people go to pollev.com/mpworkshop, pollev.com/mpworkshop. This is where you can, say your name or not and just quickly give a piece of feedback. And so we'll be doing this after every lesson, and also actually in the next lesson we'll be using this polling software for other stuff as well. So please you have one piece of something that was good and something that was not so good, so that the instructors can read it over the coffee break, and then have some coffee break, and we'll meet you back at 10:45.